This is part 2 of chapter 3. If you remember, we left off with some basic information about the staff, including measures and bar lines and whatnot. We're going to be talking a little bit more about counting and using the different types of notes and rests within a musical context. So let's get started. Here is a very not well drawn, but very clear breakdown of the notes that we know. Recall that these are whole notes, these are half notes, these are quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. If you remember also how the breakdown works, then this picture should help you. Because if we take half of a whole, which usually has 4 beats, we get a half note, which is 2 beats. So half of a whole is half. Half of 4 is 2, right? 4 beats, 2 beats. Now, our half note, if we split that in half, we get quarter notes. Half of a half note is a quarter note. You can also think of it as there being 2 quarter notes to make up 1 half note, because half note gets 2 beats, quarter note gets 1 beat, 1 plus 1 equals 2. We're just splitting things apart. Now, if we take this quarter note, which gets 1 beat, and we split it in half, we get an eighth note, which is half a beat. This right here. If this gets 1 beat, half of 1 is a half. So how many halves are in 1? Well, half a beat plus half a beat equals 1 beat, right? So there's always going to be 2 break-offs of 1 type of note. Now, half of an eighth note is a 16th note. If an eighth note is half a beat, well, half of a half is a quarter, so a 16th note gets a quarter of a beat. So that breakdown, there are 2 half notes and a whole note, 2 quarter notes and a half note, 2 eighth notes and a quarter note, 2 16th notes and an eighth note. So you can take any of these notes and break it down into 2 smaller types of notes. And you also, of course, get a smaller beat with it, number of beats. So this chart also shows us a good breakdown of what all can encompass a whole note. Our whole note gets 4 beats, right? So we could put 2 half notes fit in the space of a whole note, 4 quarter notes fit in the space of a whole note, 8 eighth notes fill the space of a whole note, and 16 16th notes fill the space of a whole note. I'm just going to do a little bit of notes here just so that we're clear on this. So this gets 4 beats, 2 beats, 1 beat, half a beat, and a quarter of a beat. An easy breakdown, right? Half of 4 is 2, half of 2 is 1, half of 1 is 1 half, half of 1 half is 1 quarter. Now, we can take combinations of these and make them add up to different numbers, and that's very common in music. That's how you read the rhythm. So we're going to do that in a couple examples, so let's move on. Here are 2 lines of music. At the beginning of each line, you'll notice there is the time signature that we talked about in part 1 of this chapter. The top number tells you what? How many beats are in a measure. The bottom tells you what? What kind of note gets the beat. Now, easiest way to think of it, I always do it just in one sentence. There are 4 quarter notes in a measure. Here there are 2 quarter notes in a measure. So let's do some counting and see if this is correct. So right here we have 4 quarter notes in this measure. Each of them get 1 beat, so those all total 4. So there are 4 beats in that measure. Half notes in the next measure get 2 counts each. 2 plus 2 gives us that's right, 4 beats. And then, of course, The whole note gets 4 beats, so we know that that measure is full because we have 4 beats in each measure, and the quarter note gets the beats. Let's do it in 2/4 time, where there are 2 quarter notes in each measure. Quarter notes get 1 beat, so this measure, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Half notes, eighth notes get half a beat each. So if we add up our 4 halves, we get 2 beats. That checks out. And then our half note gets 2 beats. All of those check out to make 2 beats in each measure where the quarter note gets the beat. To bring our knowledge of rhythm and note duration full circle, we're going to have to talk about dotted notes. Now, you can place a dot after any note and change its duration. There is a formula that goes along with dotted notes that can be used for any note that you would place a dot after, and that's what we're going to discuss. So we're going to work with our whole note, which normally has 4 beats, our half note, which usually has 2 beats, and the quarter note, which gets 1 beat. If we place a dot after a whole note, that simply means that you are going to take half of that note and add it on to itself. So, half of a whole note, which is 4 beats, is 2, because half of 4 is 2. Now, if we add those 2 beats onto the original whole note, we get what? 6 beats. 2 plus 4 is 6. Easy math. Let's place a dot after the half note. Just like before, the dot means you're going to take half of the note and add it on to itself. So, half of 2 is 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Let's do the same for the quarter note. Half of the quarter note plus the quarter note. So, half of 1 is half. 1 plus a half is 1 1/2. Which seems like a strange number, but in certain time signatures it's used a lot. Let's discuss that real quick. Here is an example where you're going to use the dotted half note. In 3/4 time, which means there are 3 quarter notes in a measure, the dotted half note is used for a full measure. Because there are 3 quarter notes in a measure, how many beats does that give us in a measure? Well, we should know by looking at the top number that the answer is 3. 3 quarter notes, each getting 1 beat, gives you 3 beats in a measure. In the second measure here, we have a quarter note and a half note. Once again, 3 beats in a measure. So, if we wanted to play a note that lasted for the entirety of the measure, we would use a dotted half note, because as we learned from up here, the dotted half note gets 3 beats. Alright, let's do one more. Look at 6/8 time. Of course, we have 6/8 notes per measure. Each eighth note gets our beat. You'll notice these are grouped in threes. That's very common in 6/8 time to have 3/8 notes grouped together. It fits the time signature very well. If I wanted this group of eighth notes to become one note, what would that do? Because we know that 2 eighth notes make a quarter note, but what do 3 eighth notes make? Well, if we think of it using the fractions that we gave it before, the half a beat, right? 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 equals what? Well, that equals 1.5. 1.5 is our dotted quarter note. Okay, so if we wanted to, we could have in the place of 3/8 notes a dotted quarter. So this measure here, if we combine each set of eighth notes, would look like this over here with a dotted quarter note and another dotted quarter note, because as we learned previously, a dotted quarter note has 1.5 beats. Eighth notes get half a beat. 3 halves equal 1.5. That's our dotted quarter. In Chapter 3, you're going to be asked several types of questions that have to do with duration. It's very important that you quickly learn the duration that's associated with each type of note. Here, for instance, let's say it wanted to ask you how many beats are on this line. Well, if I were you, I would keep little notes to help count them up. Find all the quarter notes. They're, of course, 1 beat. Eighth notes are half a beat. Half notes are 2 beats. Whole notes are 4 beats. So we have 1, 2, 2.5, 4.5, 6.5, 7. 7 plus 4, 11. 11 plus 1, 12. So we know that this line has 12 beats. Now, on the bottom line, it might ask you a question such as, which side has less beats? What type of note would you have to draw to make that side the same? So let's do some note taking first of all. We have eighth notes, which get half a beat. A quarter rest, which just like the quarter note, gets 1 beat. Half note gets 2 beats. Whole note over here gets 4 beats. If we add up this side here, 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1, plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. We have 5 beats on this side of the equation, and 4 beats on this side. Now, this side needs 1 beat for them to be equal. What type of note has 1 beat? Well, if you remember, that would be the quarter note. So you would just draw in a quarter note over here, or you could even draw in a quarter rest if you felt like it. That would still give you that 1 beat needed to make that side have 5 beats. Be aware of this, so you'll be doing it quite a bit in this chapter.